Hello and welcome back in to the Intelligent Automation Network. Here we are, Hyperautomation Live, the solution showcase. We've got already had a number of great sessions, and we've got a number of great sessions to come, but stop what you're doing. Incorporating IDP and App Connectors into your hyperautomation strategy. It is Ephesoft. We've got a number of great presenters for you. If you have any questions for me, for them, pop them into the chat. And here's another way that you can engage. We've got a poll. Where do you consider your organization on the hyperautomation journey? You have a few choices. You can say you're just beginning. You've got 25% of processes automated. You've got 50% of processes automated, or you have no plans. So those are the four options that you have. We do want you to go ahead and participate. But in the meantime, Brandon Campbell, I'm going to hand it over to you. And you've got a number of folks with you, so we're excited. We're looking forward to it, and I'll see you back at Q&A.
Perfect. All right. So, hey, everybody. My name is Brandon Campbell, and I'm going to be running this session on incorporating intelligent document processing and app connectors into your hyperautomation strategy. So I want to start off by introducing my co-panelists to start. Steve, who has either just recently joined the Witness Protection Program or is having camera difficulties, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Everybody, I'm Steve Bowles. I'm head of strategy and evangelism at Ephesoft, and looking forward to sharing some of our findings today.
Thank you, Steve. And Ram?
Hi, I'm Ram Aganti. I'm VP of Business Development at Workato, which has a market-leading integration-led automation platform. In my prior life, I've been leading multiple platform-based development programs, which included iPaaS, BPM, API management, among other digital platforms.
Thanks, Ram. And I am Brandon Campbell. I'm on the business development team here at Ephesoft, and I work with a combination of our technology partners like Workato, as well as our global consultancy and system integrator partners. So I want to start off with the obvious, as we're in a hyperautomation session for the last couple of days. I want to define hyperautomation in terms of how we're going to be approaching this particular session. So very succinctly put, hyperautomation is the sum of a variety of modern technologies that are all going to work together to automate tasks and processes, to eliminate wastes, hopefully to provide insights for future decision making, to cut operational costs, just kind of, make the coffee, all of those things. And over the years, the concept of hyperautomation, it's evolved, but it's been referred to as digital transformation, as process automation, as intelligent automation. And what that goal is keeps shifting a little bit to look for more and more to do with less and less. And so hyperautomation is all of these things, but the quest for hyperautomation is a little bit of a new tech frontier. So one thing I wanted to point out is that there's a research article from McKinsey, and it posited that while few occupations are fully automatable, 60% of all occupations or jobs have at least 30% of their work that is technically automatable, or an activity that's something that can be automated. And I wanted to just call that out because I think it's an interesting take on automation that focuses on the individual and the jobs, rather than the organization as a whole, which in the world of tech is typically the kind of thing that we focus on. But I think it's pretty relevant when we look at organizational productivity as a result of tasks that are being automated by humans rather than some operational entity. And one thing that I do want to reference as well here is that while I only called out a couple of different types of tools and technologies that make up hyperautomation on this slide, the concept of hyperautomation is absolutely massive and encompasses far more solutions, both niche and diverse. But for the purposes of this session, as we look at HA, we're going to be covering all things that are process and task specific for organizations. Now, before really digging into this lovely little survey response, I would love to get the experts and their subsequent areas of interest to define what intelligent document processing and integration platform as a service is. So Steve, if you want to start, and then Ram, you could pitch in.
Sure. From an IDP perspective, one of the nice things for a doc processing company is that 80% of all business processes include some type of document content or require some access to a document record. So IDP is really a tech platform to help you understand that document-based content, classify the type, extract data of interest, and hyperautomation workflow and RPA can rely on that data, right, to make their processing more effective. So it's I want to make one thing clear, though. It's not just OCR, the conversion of that text if you're bringing in some type of image or document, but really an end-to-end pipeline that brings in content, converts it, analyzes it, and then provides that valuable data and context to a process to make it more efficient.
Thank you. And Ram, for the integration platform?
Yeah, so iPaaS, if people don't know, it's an integration platform as a service. It's a cloud-based solution that essentially helps you to connect the tools and systems that power your business, where information can be shared seamlessly instead of these one-off spaghetti-type integrations or manual data entry. So essentially, it connects otherwise disjointed systems to deliver a unified solution. The key benefits of iPaaS would be, you have a centralized management and streamlining of connectivity where you don't have to worry about the different protocols, the different technology underpinnings. It also allows you to do real-time processing of information, and thus eliminating silos and data islands in the enterprise. Finally, it also helps you to improve security and compliance because you have a single place where you can administer policies and make sure the connection details are all handled in a safe manner. Right? That, in a nutshell, is iPaaS.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, relating to these two definitions, what you're seeing on the screen right here is a survey response from enterprise organizations conducted by Gartner in December of 2020. So it's not quite a year old, but it was basically asking for input from the average organization, from the C-suite. What's the most important component of technology to adopt when you're looking at an automation strategy? And it's interesting to see how I think these specific, options that were given in terms of what's an important component of automation reflect what's currently being proposed or implemented or delivered at a variety of organizations. And I think it's also worth commenting on the fact that many large RPA companies have kind of led the charge on or subsumed the concept of hyperautomation. And that's become a part of our daily zeitgeist now. And these analyst firms like Gartner and Everest are looking at what makes that up. And there's this big push from RPA providers to say, well, hyperautomation is RPA. That's what we do. That's our focus. But I think there might be a slight shift in prioritization of what's the most important technology or the most crucial technology to building a sound strategy. So Steve, you referenced, 80% of document process or 80% of organizational processes require documents. So if an organizational process requires documents, just automating that manual process without adding a layer of document intelligence, that process is going to fail. Or Ram, you talked about, data silos and interoperability. Just automating a single task without looking at the way those different systems talk to each other. That task a human conducts might touch 3 different applications. How those applications interact and whether or not the data is interoperable across those systems and applications can be a challenge or a concern. So something that we're looking at now and that most organizations are looking at is how to evolve and grow their automation strategy and what tools really create a successful implementation. So in that, I want to pass it back over to you guys to ask, what makes up a successful hyperautomation strategy? What are the different components of a tech stack that should be looked at? And I know we're a little bit biased, but I want to talk about the foundation of how to automate for any company.
Sure. Yeah, I'll kick it off. I mean, every organization is going to be different, right? From both a strategy and a tech stack perspective. I think the main recommendation I would give, based on what I've seen in hyperautomation across the customers and organizations that we deal with, is that you want to buy your platforms for the long run, not short-term needs, and really choose best-in-class solutions that are focused on providing the best business results and can be customized for broad organizational needs. So if I go back to my expertise, which is doc processing, all too often we see organizations pour time and money into extension of modules or kind of one-off document analytical type engines that plug in. And they really have to build and extend these to meet their long-term needs. They would have really been better off choosing a dedicated, comprehensive, best-in-class platform to do that particular task, which really would provide flexibility, scalability, and all the pre-built features that they need. So there's a lot of buyer's remorse out there when it comes to the different platforms and buying one that'll stick with you for the long run.
Ram, how about you?
So yeah, I mean, interesting. Steve brought that. It should you should buy components for the long term, right? So if I look at the automation continuum, on one end is the task automation that RPA players provide, but in the middle you pretty much have the process automation and process orchestration, where you definitely need to have a platform outlook of how to enable it, right? At the highest level, I mean, from a logical view of the hyperautomation stack, you have ingestion engines, and like you guys mentioned, the document management is one of the biggest contributors to that ingestion engine. You have process mining tools where I can look at event logs, etc., and determine processes, and the process itself can be part of an input to the ingestion engine, right? And the next level would be I need a master orchestrator of these processes, right? And some of the processes can be long-lived, cross-functional boundaries. I might need a BPM or an IBPMS platform. And to build this modeling, you probably have a low-code application platform that helps you quickly simplify and build these long-running processes, right? And also the decisioning. I mean, sometimes you have to codify the policies into business rules. So you need a decision management and a business rules engine sometimes, right? And to inject intelligence into this whole processes, you need AI and ML. Essentially, you're learning continuously from the data and kind of improve the quality of automation, if you will, right? And make the necessary adjustments and make it a closed loop. Now, I talked about 3 or 4 complementary adjacent platforms, and you definitely need an iPaaS / automation platform to stitch together all this, right, all the way from the ingestion engines to the process flow to the AIML to the UI, UX, and EX, right? So that in my view is the logical component stack of an hyperautomation platform.
I think it's interesting you both brought this up, kind of like the long term and the interoperability, kind of these themes. It makes me think about any given organization has, 1,000,001 different systems and applications they use, and they rarely talk to each other. And so the idea of having these like dedicated tools that are best in class to accomplish specific tasks, whether it is process mining or intelligent document processing or chatbot expertise, and then having these, dedicated tools that support a specific use case across a broad, variety of needs for an organization, and then having that integration platform that knits it all together. So it doesn't matter what version of what system you're on and how things upgrade and are changed, is really important for the long term and for the health of how your organization can scale. All right, so as the buzz around hyperautomation has intensified in volume, Ram, you just mentioned a couple of these things, RPA and business process management, iPaaS, analytics applications, they're all increasingly sought after technologies. There's a challenge in workforce meeting the needs of any given organization right now. COVID has thrown a wrench into, everyone's operational strategy. Is every single company in the world is trying to figure out how to maintain profitability, how to do more with less resources, with less hands-on work, and to use these technologies. The first step of any process is going to be that data accessibility. So whether it is systems data interoperability or document-based operational task data accessibility, you need that data to power literally every other tool in your toolbox here. So you have unstructured content in the form of documents, in the form of social media and web pages. And it makes process automation, task automation, anything incredibly difficult without some type of tool that's going to make sense out of the blob of words or blob of text existing somewhere in the ether, and putting it into something that's like actionable and useful for everything downstream, like predictive analytics, like that process automation, like understanding the process itself so that you can mine it and make it a repeatable or more optimal use case, basically. So at Ephesoft specifically, we're investing pretty heavily in our marketplaces integration strategy. So no matter what RPA platform you're using or business process management tool, working with companies like Workato that have a huge suite of integrations and connectors and accelerators available just in their marketplace for dragging and dropping functionality to integrate with other applications. We want to make sure that how we support intelligent document processing for any component of your automation strategy is in line with the business needs. And it's in line with that low code, no code approach that Workato has to automation. So I wanted to touch a little bit on kind of like the evolution of intelligent automation, because I think this has a big impact on how we look at technology as we move forward into a more modern approach of operational efficiency. And we're seeing this interesting trend where companies that are providing, cloud-based integration platforms like Workato are also providing things like business intelligence, maybe a little bit of process mining, maybe a little bit of a workflow. And I look at RPA as what was once kind of like the beacon of hyperautomation, which was built on this older version or this maybe slightly antiquated approach to automation, which was looking at screen scraping to repeat manual tasks. It was something that was built on the concept of mainframe limitations to try to automate some limitations and integrations that you saw with mainframes. And then you look at companies like Workato, the iPaaS companies that are looking at an integration first strategy, an API collection approach to looking at how systems talk to each other. And I think it's changing the way that we look at operational efficiency for the organization as a whole. And now, Ram, I know we've spoken about this in the past a little bit about how assets and people are moving from RPA companies to iPaaS companies. They're moving from business process management tools directly into that integration first approach. And I'd love your input on how you're seeing like the changing nature of automation, just from your perspective as the major SIs that you're working with are looking at a slightly different approach to business processes.
Sure. Thanks, Brendan. While you were talking, I was reminded of a white paper that I read not long ago from one of the analyst firms. I don't remember if it's Forrester or HFS. The title of the paper read something like, RPA is dead, long live integrated automation platforms. And they went to define these integrated automation platforms, which mirrored pretty much the technology stack and the various pieces that we discussed today. RPA definitely offered some technical capability and breathed some life into legacy systems and processes, but it hasn't really inspired enterprises to rewire any of their current process, right? It only helped them move data, maybe a little less manual intervention. But in my opinion, RPA it has only prolonged that tech debt and process debt that the organizations have accumulated over time. So, and the writing on the wall was pretty much, the RPA players themselves have seen it. And so they have gone ahead and, bought in some integration platforms like UiPath and bought Cloud Elements. And interestingly, the pure play integration providers have gone and bought RPA players, right? To round out MuleSoft and even Microsoft bought an RPA player recently to round out the. But it'll be interesting to watch them bolt on different products with different technology underpinnings to see how they tackle this integration and automation problem in the next few months, right? Workato, we always had the vision that integration and automation are the two sides of the same coin. You really can't have automation without integration, and you can't really reap the benefits of automation without integration, right?
Yep.
So the key would be to have this hyperautomation platform stack available to the business and IT users to enable that automation, right? And abstract away some of these, technology and be able to easily integrate the applications. For example, if I'm talking to Salesforce, I should be able to easily abstract away the technology details and look at trigger events or marketing events, for example. And given that we're dependent on cloud and SaaS, we should be able to abstract away some of the technology scaling and load balancing, etc. Right? So all that abstraction is provided by a SaaS-led integration platform, and the iPaaS platforms definitely provide that seamless connectivity, the pervasive connectivity, and allow you to automate and allow both the business and IT to build those automations across the enterprise.
So how, Steve, to that, Ram, I like it's an interesting approach. It's some good insight. And Steve, to you, as Ram talks about kind of like that convergence of iPaaS and RPA, or the business process management, everyone's kind of buying each other up and coming together because hyperautomation means so many things. All of these organizations want a bigger piece of the pie. Where do you see IDP fitting into kind of all of that, especially with RPA and iPaaS?
Yeah, I think a wise old IT guru once told me that a good technologist is a lazy technologist. It's all about finding the path to the least amount of effort, both in setup and long-term maintenance, for maximum results, right? You kind of get images of Yoda with a pocket protector. I almost did that in my Yoda voice, Brandon. But seriously, though, I think wise organizations have figured it out. Why take 3 days to configure a complex screen-centric bot when you can set up an iPaaS connector in 5 minutes, right? It operates at the data layer, not the presentation layer, and it won't change with every software release as the screens adjust, right? So what we found is that what the market wants are APIs. If APIs are available, that's the way to go, and the best way to integrate and transit data.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that at least from my perspective in like the world of capture, as I'm seeing this convergence of all of the automation and integration technologies, it kind of goes back to the best of breed thing that you mentioned earlier, Steve. You have all of these different technology components that can specialize in specific areas, and having a tool that can easily, tie in different functionalities, tie in different tools to a larger automation approach or strategy is going to be key. So again, selfishly from my perspective, looking at Ephesoft as an IDP provider that provides that kind of best-in-class approach is going to be crucial for any organization. Look for the tool, no matter what type of functionality you're looking for, that gives you the best approach for your particular use case and can scale to other use cases to support that spread across the enterprise. Which here, before we get into the next segment, I wanted to open up a quick poll to you, Seth, but I want to talk a little bit about scalability across the organization. So we'll start that off with the poll. Seth? Perfect. So what I wanted to just ask is, based on this discussion, based on your own input, what do you consider as the most important technology to look at when you're overhauling your automation goals or you're making a big strategy shift for your organization? So that RPA tool, that workflow solution, an integration platform, a capture tool, an intelligent document processing tool, employee training at the base level, or just change management? And Seth, if you want to let me know and we can move it forward if we've gotten some input.
Bit of input, and everybody's up on implementing RPA. or workflow solutions
Okay.
thus far?
Okay. All right. So yeah, it looks like a little bit of integration, a little bit of workflow, a little bit of IDP. All right. So it's mostly looking at the workflow automation, which again, I totally understand from an automation perspective. Something I'm seeing as we look at automation, and something that you mentioned, Steve, from a scalability perspective, as systems upgrade, and how that can break a bot, or how that can, make a big change in what has been built out is scalability. Something that I'm finding as a challenge, especially when I work with some of our RPA technology partners, is that from a scalability perspective, you'll have organizations that, are working with a couple of different tools and technologies, but they're all very departmental or use case specific. And there's been a little bit of a challenge in growing what that looks like. So the most common obstacle that companies are seeing to really reaping the benefits of automation, to achieving autonomy for specific tasks, or to really seeing the benefits of, customer retention, cost savings, is that scalability, is taking that starter automation project that started in accounts payable or human resources or, mortgage review, and taking that to, duplicate those benefits to other departments. And so you have companies that have a lot of claims of like low code or no code, and they're missing the mark when they actually deliver. So while the IT departments are looking at these, new hyperautomation tools and saying, oh yeah, I can totally tackle that, but almost every other department doesn't necessarily feel enabled or powerful enough or aware enough to be able to take advantage of it too. So it remains, even the abilities to automate kind of remain siloed to one specific department. And there's issues with change management where people don't necessarily want to embrace technology. So I wanted to open this up to the panel to kind of get your input, Steve and Ram, where you've seen success in having organizations move from a single department to additional departments or across the entire company or organization or agency, to really achieve those cost savings, to achieve that return, to finish their hyperautomation journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I listened to you, Brandon, I kept hearing one word: people. I think the biggest blocker to scaling hyperautomation is people. People need to trust and have faith that it'll all work. We all know our software works, but you need to get support from management and key workers to make it successful. I think a key component to that is simple to use software that's easy and quick to configure, that produces almost immediate business results. So tying into that, don't try and boil the ocean. Start with low-hanging fruit, processes that can be automated quickly and easily, but add really great value. Those small projects really help you build momentum and provide operational efficiency, but also bring up morale and people's attitude towards the overall hyper-automation effort. So those smaller wins really help you gain experience for scaling outside and across departments.
Before you chime in, Ram, Steve, can you give an example of what a good small hanging fruit process would be to start?
Things I would focus on: accounting and operations. Accounting being AP, automation, looking at the procure to pay. Operations being mailroom meaning both physical and digital inbound mail to the organization. It's things that people neglect, but typically provide really great value from an automated processing perspective.
Okay, that makes sense. What do you think, Ram?
Yeah, I completely concur with Steve, right? The key is for people to let business users take charge, right, in the company, and provide that low code, no code way of building things, right? Build their own workflows. Let them, and not let them deal with complexity in the enterprise, right? Abstract away some of that. And then the other success factor would be in the why, what, how, focus on the why we are doing this automation and focus on the benefits rather than the what and the how, because people generally delve into that. So that's when you really look at the benefits and aim for bigger goals while doing the small automations and build that towards that why.
Yeah, the why, what, how is good too. I like that. I was working on a project just in the last year with an organization, and I know not all companies have the resources to be able to do this, but there was an organization that before they implemented a single tool, before they purchased anything or entered into a license agreement, there was a very small team that went to each department in the company and said, what would make your life easier? What type of jobs are you doing that we could, implement a support or resource, something to help make your life easier? What do you get most frustrated with? What are the challenges? And they were just short little interviews to start getting some buy-in across the board to figure out, where an automation tool could help, ease challenges or ease frustrations or make a daily task quicker or simpler, or even be able to eliminate it. And it was this just fantastic approach that before a tool was even chosen, and I know it kind of increases the timeline for what your approach is, but you got buy-in from different department heads on just even thinking about automation as a concept before really getting into it. And it was just wildly successful. Steve, to your point, they did start off with AP and AR were their first kind of two automation projects. And then they moved from there, and they've been wildly successful working with several different tools. And it's just something I can't say enough, getting that buy-in, speaking to the people. I know there's so much about hyperautomation, and that's why I kind of mentioned that McKinsey thing earlier about people being the thing that we're talking about, automating jobs of what people are, physically or digitally doing. Getting that buy-in from the human capital in your workforce as a starting point toward that autonomous journey is just so incredibly crucial to see a scalability across the enterprise. Any other, before we start to wind down, any other last thoughts or comments, Steve or Ram, from your side?
No, I think it's been a great session.
Yeah, it was a good discussion, Brandon.
Thank you. So Seth, do we have any Q&A we want to address here?
We do. Yeah, great session, guys. Let's get to that. If I'm already using one of the cloud OCR services, is there any additional value to incorporating an IDP tool to my automation roadmap?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think I have a slide that I typically present, and when you look at IDP, OCR is 5% of what an IDP can do. Things like pre-processing, image normalization, AI applications, validation and exceptions processing, integration on the back end. You have to build all those yourself if you don't utilize an IDP platform. So that's my 2 cents on that. We typically come in and help folks that have tried to implement OCR only, and it can be painful.
All right, and next and last question it'll have to be, can I use my iPaaS solution for workflow routing in my mailroom operations, or is that a case that I'd need RPA to support?
So I can take that. No, definitely. I mean, like Steve mentioned, if you have IDP, if you have a document that needs to, and then subsequent decisioning that needs to happen within the mailroom operations, definitely iPaaS can be considered for some of those use cases. But if it's pure task automation, then go with an RPA. But if it's involves process, definitely use an iPaaS.
If I can add to that, I think that's an important thing to note. I know we've talked a little bit about the evolution from RPA to iPaaS, but there is absolutely a use case and a requirement where those two technologies play together hand in hand, and functionality of both will continue to merge. But I don't think there's necessarily an elimination of one or the other for any company.
Excellent, Brandon, Stephen, Ram, thank you so much. Thank you to Ephesoft for sponsoring. Thank you for being in attendance. And thank you for the questions. We're going to move right now to our next session, which starts in just 11 minutes. So we're still playing catch up just a bit. But want to thank one more time, Stephen, Ram, Brandon. Thanks so much for doing such a great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.